Hello, and we're back. Mason here at Spampinato Guitars. So I know during the last lesson we did a rundown of the anatomy of an acoustic guitar. Basically, I wanted to bring that over to electric guitars. Pretty much all of the components I pointed out on an acoustic guitar are called the same thing on an electric guitar. On an electric guitar, there's just more of them because there's more stuff going on with bringing electricity to the guitar. You know, there's going to be more components. Basically, to start out with, we've got a PRS SE Custom here, which is, in case you were wondering, semi-hollow. First component that I didn't point out the last time was going to be up here. We've got a little compartment here. This will be your truss rod cover, and that exposes the accessibility to the truss rod, so you can get a wrench in there and make adjustments to the neck. There's a steel rod that runs the length of the neck here that you can control the way the neck is curved like this. Then moving on down, we've got our pickups here. In this case, these are 2 humbucking pickups. We'll get to what that means in later courses, but 2 pickups here. These beige pieces of plastic going around these pickups, they're going to be referred to as pickup rings, and that's what's going to allow you to raise these pickups closer to the strings or drop them further away from the strings, and you get different effects, different volume changes, different tone changes by raising and lowering those. Much like on acoustic guitars, there's the saddle, where there's the second point of contact with the strings. Electric guitars have saddles, you can see here. This one has 6 individual saddles on it, and that's going to allow for individual intonation adjustment on each of these strings. And you'll find that on some acoustic guitars, but for the most part not. You're just going to have one saddle going across. And then some of the electronic geared stuff here is going to be, we've got a volume knob here, we've got a tone knob here. This right here is what you're going to call your pickup selector switch. And these come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. This one, for instance, is just a 3-way, the 2 pickups. And typically your pickup switch, whatever way you have it pointed is what a pickup is going to be activated. So if this one is pointed this way, kind of over to this side of the guitar, only this pickup is going to work. If it's in the middle, both of these pickups are going to work. If it's on this side, just this pickup. There's a million different wiring schematics out there, but this one is a pretty simple one, and for the most part, it's kind of how a lot of manufacturers try to visually wire things, so it makes a little bit more sense. Flipping the guitar over here, this is, so let me back up a little bit. So this guitar has a floating tremolo on it, meaning that you can change the pitch of the strings with a tremolo bar, also referred to as a whammy bar. But again, this is called a floating bridge guitar, which has some other components that we need to talk about. Moving on to the back of the guitar. These are what you're going to call tremolo springs. There's typically room for 5 of these. If you're using a heavier gauge of strings, you're going to use more springs. If you're using a super light gauge of strings, you're going to use fewer springs. It all depends on what kind of tension you're working on with the neck. We'll get to a lot of that later. On this side, what the springs are attached to is going to be called your tremolo block, which runs through the back and top of the guitar. That's what connects those 2 things. Moving further down, we've got what we call a tremolo claw, which holds the other side of the springs, and these are adjustable, which when we get into setting up floating bridges, we'll dive further into when not we might need to adjust this tremolo claw here. So that's that for bridges on this particular guitar at least. And then moving on into the components of the guitar, just a general overview of what some of these different electronic components are going to be called is potentiometers. So we've got the volume knob and a tone knob. These are all going to be connected to what we call potentiometers, which they look like this. There's going to be later lessons as to how these things work and the inputs and outputs of them and different ratings. But this is a general kind of place to start. We're calling them potentiometers. People call them pots a lot. A couple different kind of switches. This switch right here is what you call a blade switch. And they look like this from the inside of a guitar. A couple different lugs for ins and outs and all of that. Then we have other kind of pickup switches, which this is more of like a Les Paul style pickup switch. Same kind of an idea. Still a three-way switch, one pickup, both pickups, one pickup. And so there's some basic rundown, again, very general description of what some different components on an electric guitar are going to be referred to as.